Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So yesterday, President Trump got phase one done. Chinese delegation in tow. President Trump explaining the deal that the U.S. and China have agreed to.
Today we take a momentous step, one that has never been taken before with China, toward a future of fair and reciprocal trade as we sign phase one of the historic trade deal between the United States and China. Together we are righting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security for American workers, farmers, and families.
Michael Pillsbury, who is a Hudson Institute scholar, he's also the author of a fairly well-respected book in these circles, The 100-Year Marathon, talking about China's play to depose America as the world's hegemon. He was on with our friend Cheryl Atkinson on Full Measure, and he described the importance of the phase one deal.
What does phase one seek to do, or what will it accomplish?
Well, the most important thing about phase one, in my opinion, is to have an enforcement mechanism where the Chinese set up a system that the American side can make complaints. You stole this intellectual property from us on this date, and we lost this much money. Please fix it. China's never agreed to it with any other country in the world. So this will be the breakthrough that the president will have achieved. But there's also something that the president cares a lot about called the trade deficit. That China has a $500 billion trade deficit with us. It's the biggest one in the world. The Chinese are promising to greatly increase their purchase of American exports.
Well, he misspoke there. He meant we have a $500 billion trade deficit with the Chinese. Trade deficits don't matter. He's wrong about that. President Trump's wrong about that. But nonetheless, it is noteworthy that the phase one deal calls for China to buy about $200 billion worth of ag goods over the next 4 years.
Right.
But
we need phase two because the consumers aren't going to see a break from these tariffs when it comes to clothes, shoes, electronics until phase two is signed.
Well, yeah, although Jim Cramer, Mad Money Jim Cramer on CNBC saying, all of the predictions about tariffs, the negative predictions about tariffs and this approach to China proved untrue.
Look, I think that the takeaway for me is that tariffs worked. If you go back in time, people just said, listen, tariffs won't work, won't change them. The Chinese are all powerful. Tariffs will hurt our consumer. The consumer is going to see a lot of inflation, both at the producer level and the consumer level, ultimately, which is going to hurt the U.S. economy. None of that happened. The whole narrative is that China caved, and China's going to continue to cave because we didn't take the tariffs off. So I keep wondering when people are going to recognize that it is historic that tariffs did succeed. They weren't supposed to work. The Chinese were supposed to be able to get around them. It didn't happen. The Chinese were kind of accepting that they had to do something in order to keep the American market.
Yeah, well, with all due respect to Mad Money Kramer, what actually happened, yes, the tariffs brought the Chinese to heel to some extent, and to the extent that you can trust anything they sign on to, number one. Number two, the issue wasn't about us not being hurt. The issue is China's economy, as anticipated, was hurt much more severely. China's consumers hurt much more severely than our consumers. But just because we have economic growth doesn't mean that tariffs were growth policy. Tariffs retard growth. And so taxes, which is what a tariff is, not pro-growth. So, yes, we took a hit. The Chinese took a bigger hit, and it brought them to the table. Now, with respect to phase two, and it's point of fact, it's interesting that Pillsbury points out it's the enforcement mechanism that's been set up that's the real key to phase one, not the $200 billion in ag purchases. But what about the prospects for phase two? We go back to Michael Pillsbury.
Well, this is a very delicate issue because phase two is supposed to be things that were not resolved in phase one. The biggest one being the subsidies Chinese companies get from their government. They give them massive unfair advantages against our companies. Some people think phase one means no more tariffs. President Trump has dropped the ball. No, he's kept most of the tariffs on China. So the pressure is still on. China's very unhappy about this.
And the best reaction to all of this is from Chuck Schumer. I mean, these guys, Shameless.
This so-called deal does next to nothing of substance for workers and businesses feeling the brutal, merciless weight of China's trade and industrial abuse.
It's just such a remarkable statement from a guy who has been in Congress since America was a forest, who had no problems with Democrat regimes who did nothing on any of these scores either.
Yeah, and Trump even brought that up. That presidents in the past haven't touched the subject.
Folded on conferring MFN status to China, which was arguably a mistake, to normalize them knowing what their business practices were. And then he's going to say, you moved the flag, but you didn't move it far enough. So, it's really something. I mean, it's not surprising, but it's still worth noting. For more on this topic, as well as, of course, impeachment theater, we're pleased to be joined again by David Harsanyi, senior writer for National Review, author of First Freedom, A Ride Through America's Enduring History with the Gun, From the Revolution to Today. David, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So the USMCA that's going to be inked soon, and then this Phase 1 announcement yesterday. I mean, these are Trump victories. It's hard to view them otherwise, isn't it?
Politically, I think absolutely. The perception is that we're winning the trade deal, and I expect, as you just mentioned, that we would win it because the pain we feel, or that we don't actually see because of economic growth in general with tariffs, helped us win these. But sometimes I hear people complain about things like you mentioned, the trade deficit, but also subsidies. Like, why wouldn't I want the Chinese government to subsidize products that come here and make them cheaper for me? I will never understand that. But
yes. Also, one other point on that. Why wouldn't I want them to subsidize their state-owned companies because it's going to make them less competitive to our not subsidized private sector companies?
Right. Now, obviously, there's always some pain involved when you have that sort of thing, or creative destruction here, where you have industries that hurt. But overall, we always ignore the consumer side of this, which allows us to have more money to buy other things to create new industries. But anyway, I'm never going to win that argument with most people. So we're worried about China. Most people are on right and left. It looks like Donald Trump is winning that battle, and I think politically that's good for him.
And don't you think this is good for the farmers, too? I mean, now that China says they're going to buy $200 billion worth of U.S. goods?
Here's a thing that is not very popular that I say, and that is that I don't really care. I don't know why we romanticize farming in a way that we don't other industries. If they cannot compete, I'm not sure why we should force other people to help them, or why we should be bailing them out in general. But yes, I'm sure this will be good for the farmers.
I mean, there is an argument. I mean, I hear what you're saying. There is an argument about certain industries having a unique sensitivity, like food production.
I mean, they feed the world.
We've been bailing them out, and we've been the way we.
Well, the bailout was twice as big as what the bailout was for the auto industry.
And that's another thing we should not have done at all. But I understand, and I think actually that farming is far more sensitive than something like the automotive industry. So I understand why we do it. I just think it's a mistake. But I'm sort of radical free market type, so I don't think that's a popular position these days.
Yeah. Speaking of unpopular positions, what did you make of the Our Lady of Guadalupe procession that Nancy Pelosi headed up yesterday?
It's just eye-rolling. It reminded me very much of the time that she walked through the mall or whatever with the gavel, or when she walked from the House to the Senate on Obamacare. It is weirdly religious in a way, and it is ritualistic, and I find it really off-putting, and it just actually shows that this thing's just political theater for the most part.
What do you think about Lev Parnas? He came forward, spoke with Rachel Maddow, spoke with Anderson Cooper. The full interview is going to air tonight on CNN, just implicating Trump in this Ukrainian deal.
I mean, is he a guy that anyone can really trust? I don't know what to make of it yet, honestly. I just watch it. I'm like, this Russia-Ukraine thing is never going to end. I will die, and they'll still be talking about this. So I don't know what to make of it yet. It seems very odd, the timing of all of it. It seems like it's, again, just kind of political, but I honestly, I don't know what to make of it yet.
Well, and also,
I assume it's nonsense in general, but we'll see.
Well, and even if you take what he says at face value, so you're telling me that Trump knew that what Giuliani and his associates were doing in Ukraine, the guy that he dispatched to Ukraine. Well, and so what?
Yeah, here's the thing. I was thinking about this yesterday. If we hadn't gone through 3 years of one conspiracy theory after the next, being on my television and in my newspapers, maybe I would take something like this more seriously. But at this point, I can't even keep up anymore, and it just seems to me that it's better to err on the side of Donald Trump when it comes to the bigger conspiracy theories. I just don't buy it, and even as you just said, even if I do, I'm not exactly sure what the crime is.
Thinking about the Democrat socialists that are going to be before Iowa voters in just a few short weeks, you think there's enough time to repair the relationship between those septuagenarian socialists? I'm a little disquieted about the angst between them.
Well, I think that whole post-debate little interaction between them. To me, it seemed like it was staged by Warren. Yeah, to me, it seemed like she had thought about all this ahead of time. I don't know who's lying. I don't even really understand why it's such a big deal in the sense that can't someone have the opinion that a woman can't win? It's not like he's saying he doesn't want a woman to win. He's saying that he didn't believe a woman could win. So even the initial comment to me doesn't seem like that big a deal.
But could he have said maybe you can't win, regardless of gender, Elizabeth? This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he could. I mean, who knows? I don't know. All I know is that someone yesterday was saying like how I need to believe Elizabeth Warren because she's a woman.
Yeah, that's what they insinuated during the debate. They automatically took her side, which I automatically took Bernie's side because I can't see him saying that. And actually,
right.
I mean, I really don't care. I don't like either of them. I find them repulsive, and I think that the big winner from the debate was President Trump because that was so boring and only 7 million people watched.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that Warren has made Bernie somewhat sympathetic in a way, and I fight that as best I can. But I feel like he is not the type of guy who probably would have said something like that. My view of the debate was that no one really believes what they're talking about on that stage except for Bernie, and what he's saying obviously is very horrifying. So I don't know that that's good for Democrats in general.
What do you think, speaking of Camp Bernie and what they're saying, those Project Veritas videos about one of his lead apparatchiks, or featuring one of his lead apparatchiks in Iowa, talking about the glorious gulags that they're going to construct when Bernie wins to re-educate Trump voters from to stopping Nazis. I know you can get some wild cards on your campaign team, but he seemed to indicate that there were a lot of fellow anarcho-communists that were part of Bernie's field operation and campaign.
The biggest wild card on that campaign is Bernie Sanders, who went to Moscow, while people were still being held political prisoners, and what was it, 88 or whatever it was. So it's completely not surprising to see people like that on his campaign. I mean, I don't know why the press keeps treating him like he's just some normal candidate. You have basically, a communist running for the presidency. He's only a democratic socialist because he has no choice but to be a democratic socialist in a democratic country. And, it's just weird that we continue to pretend. He could have easily have been the nominee for the Democratic Party last time around, and he could easily be it now. And that says a lot about the left in this country, and something we're not really talking about. We are, but not the mainstream media.
Well, and it seems that Obama world and the Clintonistas are getting hip to that possibility, too, because you've had both Jim Messina, Obama's former campaign manager, and yesterday Joe Lockhart, Clinton's former spokesman, both write pieces basically saying, hey, Bernie isn't getting enough scrutiny. That's what Lockhart's message was. And Messina saying Bernie would not only lose, he'd take down the Democrat majority in the House with him. So they're trying to signal that the bridge is out if you, or the bridge is going to be blown if you nominate Bernie.
I mean, can you imagine the things that he's, there's a lot of crazy things he's already said, and people aren't paying close attention. And because he's never really ever accomplished anything, passed a bill, whatever, people don't understand how radical he is and the things that he's said and done. I think once they start realizing that, it's going to be somewhat shocking to some Democrats, and it's going to be a big problem if he wins. I mean, I still think Biden's going to win, but it's still a problem anyway because the guy's really popular. I mean, if Warren decided tomorrow not to run anymore, I assume many of her votes would go to him. I mean, I'm not sure about that because it usually breaks in ways you don't expect, but I assume that he would become more popular than Biden.
All right. He is David Harsanyi, senior writer for National Review. The book, First Freedom, A Ride Through America's Enduring History with the Gun, From the Revolution to Today. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you have pain, listen up. Dennis Prager here. You don't need to live in pain. Let me repeat that. You don't have to live in pain. Chronic pain is the worst, whether it's from an accident or pain that just develops. So Chicagoland, you're in luck. Dr. Ken Candido is one of the nation's most respected and successful pain doctors. He's been voted one of Chicago's best pain doctors several times. Bottom line, he's the pain doctor you need. Dr. Candido of Chicago Anesthesia and Pain Specialists will help you get off pain medication and all of its side effects. How? By finding the source